it inside yourself, like having that third drink or having that extra slice of pie or whatever it is. You just kind of know it hits you in your conscience. And then there are physiological consequences after, and then you can't stop. And then the repeated performance of the sin is the only thing that makes the physiological consequences go away. Right. Like I feel really bad, so I eat, and then I feel really bad. But when I eat, I stop feeling bad, and you end up in this downward spiral. And porn is the same way.
Right. That shame cycle. You feel terrible, so you use porn as an escape to feel better. Then you feel bad for doing it, so it just perpetuates the cycle. And yeah, the worst sins are the ones that we don't really believe are sins. And that's what the enemy does to us. And that's based on Luke 4 and Matthew 4, where Jesus goes into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, by Satan. And you see even there, Satan tried to tempt Jesus by testing him physically with the bread, told him to turn, the rock into bread. He twisted scripture by saying the scripture says this, and no angels will let your feet touch the ground. And so he does that to us and convinces us that what we're doing isn't a sin. He did the same thing to Eve in the garden. And so that's what happens with so many of these men is they get convinced either through the work of the enemy or, unfortunately now, society, all of society, and even some of the church and even some counselors and therapists are telling them that it's not only not a sin, but that it's okay or even that it's healthy. And so an entire generation of men has been deceived. And now they're trapped and they need help and they need forgiveness and strength to get out of it.
And you have, not that he's any Christian authority, furthest thing from it, but when you have Dennis Prager going to bat for porn and masturbation against like Jordan Peterson and that whole Exodus thing, and he like Charlie Kirk, he was on stage. It's just a very bizarre hill to die on, and not that Dennis Prager is a man that any Christian should be listening to for moral guidance for many reasons. But you have this full-scale civilization-wide push to normalize it and say it's not that big a deal. With the hypersexualization of culture, but now it's like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's just part of modernity. It's like, no, it's not fine.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not. And I think there's a couple causes for that. And some are, I think, just the downfall of society. And we live in a sinful society. And it continues to get even more sinful and debaucherous. So that, I think, is part of it. I think there's another part of it. And you could do a whole nother podcast on this, but I think it's, part of societies and they, quote unquote, they use it as a way to emasculate men, to be honest, to keep men down, to keep men occupied, to keep them safe and distracted and to weaken them.
Yes. Michael Foster calls it digital fornication, and he pairs it with video games and calls them digital fornication and fake dominion.
Right.
This idea that what we as men are meant to do is to conquer and take dominion and be fruitful, multiply. And screens, video games, and pornography sort of co-opt that very healthy, natural masculine energy and channel it essentially into nothingness.
Yes.
Right. And when you have the whole scale shaming of men and masculinity that we experience in culture, it's very easy and very convenient for boys and men to just quit and say, I'm just going to give all my energy to a screen instead of actually be out there in the world, be attacked, be shamed for being a masculine man. I'll just waste my life away this way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how he described that both in his book. And I think he really spelled it out when he did the program with Cannon Press and Doug Wilson. He really kind of spelled that out. And I thought it was man rampant. And I thought I couldn't have come up with a better way to describe it, how it's taking something. And this, again, is what the enemy does. He takes something that's good. He takes something that God created for good, that's natural, and he twists it and turns it into something that's terrible for us and doesn't honor us or honor God. So it takes a sexual drive, a masculine drive, to conquer, to take on something and achieve it, whether it be finding a bride or whether it be hunting for your food or whether it be whatever it might be, that inner warrior that every man has inside of him and has been repressed, takes that natural thing that God created and twists it into this thing that accomplishes absolutely nothing. And not only does it accomplish nothing, it does the negative. It's not just a baseline. It actually brings you down and destroys you physically, destroys you emotionally, and destroys you physically, and can destroy your family and everything you know.